Guys, Pretzelman 945 here. Welcome back to another video, and welcome to a video that I have been wanting to make for, at this point, several months, and that's because I have finally concluded a personal watching project of mine, which is that I watched everything in the Ghost in the Shell franchise. Um, Now, when I say this, I'm sure that I might get, if I even get any comments on this video, I might get like one comment or maybe even more than one. I don't know. Um, where like, oh, did you watch this in particular specific little special thing? I will tell you that I did not watch anything that was like a fucking Hachikoma special or anything like that, or like a random collection of specials or some um combination thing. I kind of like watched all the major things, and I think that that is honestly enough because I have been watching the entirety of this franchise at this point for like, mm, let's see, like 1, 2, 3 months, basically. So yeah. Enough yapping out of the way. Let's get into talking about the stuff itself. Because I basically watched all the major stuff that wasn't some like obscure one-off special or OVA or something. Um, Now, I am going to go in sort of release order for when these things came out to kind of provide a simple sequential structure to this video. Um, and we're going to start by talking about the original 1995 movie. And man, this movie is fantastic. This perfectly holds up. It has a very interesting idea. In terms of like Motoko, the main character, being this central figure around which we can see how being in a digital age affects the sense of identity because she doesn't really have one. She doesn't remember her original body. Most of her cyber brain belongs to the government. She doesn't really have much of her own identity at all. Um, and you contrast this with the main villain of the movie, the Puppet Master, who is this like elite hacker who can implant false memories and therefore create an identity. And it's sort of about the mystery of finding this hacker and then um uh I am going to be spoiling. I should have I should have probably mentioned that, but you know, my channel is generally like very rife with spoilers anyway, so I didn't think about it. I am going to be spoiling like basically everything with Ghost in the Shell here. Um, so if you want to watch it for yourself and you kind of came here to sort of see what the deal is, um, and figure out what the best things are to watch, then I'm going to deviate and cover this real quickly. Um, I would say that the things that are worth watching are the original 1995 movie and its sequel, Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocent, along with both seasons of Standalone Complex. This does kind of foreshadow the video a bit, but everything else beyond that, in my opinion, is not really worth watching. But if you're curious as to my thoughts of why, and you don't really care about being spoiled, um, then continue watching, I suppose. But if you have any interest in watching it yourself, then stop the video here, leave now, go watch these things, and then if you want to, you could come back and hear my thoughts on everything. Um but yeah, because all that to say, the movie concludes with the whole thing of them sort of joining together, Motoko and the Puppet Master, at least, with this idea being that Motoko released herself to the net, and this was like an active individual will that she did, and she's sort of finally free in a way. Um, I thought that everything about the movie's themes and the concept just worked so well, and I can totally see why so many people apply this to real life today because there are so many things in this movie that are just so applicable in so many ways. Um, but also, like, I think that what this movie does even better actually than making a really damn good and compelling story is actually the fact that it makes such a vibe. And I know that might seem confusing, but that really is the only way I can describe it. Everything about the world building, about the music, about the atmosphere, about the character design, it just gives off this insane vibe to it, which is just it makes it completely unique. Like it makes it entirely its own thing with its entirely own identity. And it does this to such a fabulous extent that it truly feels that like nothing else I have ever seen anime wise, even among sci-fi stuff, and even like, other projects within this franchise continue this trend of being really good about it. But I feel like the original movie is sort of special in this way because it was the first one to do it, and I don't really think anything else within the Ghost in the Shell franchise nails the vibe nearly as well as the original movie created it. Well, except for the sequel, which I will move into talking about now. And I just actually finished watching this sequel a little while ago. Um, and this movie was pretty good. I don't think it's as good as the original, but I do think it is sort of an underrated gem. Um, it is a much weirder movie. Like the original movie already had some some pretty grippy stuff in it, but this movie is a whole nother level. If I had to compare it to another anime movie, it's actually like, in terms of the weirdness and creepiness part, it's pretty similar actually to Paprika. Um, uh, But like I think that this film, just like the original film, does a fucking incredible job of just nailing the vibe. And this is just shown in so many ways. The it's like the use of a lot of very slow camera shots, like just a lot of slow walking shots of like Bato or Togusa. Um and I will talk about their characters a little bit more with this movie in a second since they play a bigger role, but also like what I thought of them in the original movie because I didn't really cover that. But um there's also like a lot of stills where they're just talking. And for a lot of things, this would be seen as pretty basic information, but not information, animation. But in my opinion, I think that this does such a good job of nailing the vibe of Ghost in the Shell because it's sort of like just quiet and slowed down. And I can't tell you my favorite part of this movie was by far um the scenes of Bato filling in his house with his dog. Like that shit was so adorable. I I loved it. I truly I loved everything about that. It was such a cute thing that explored so much about Bato's character with literally no dialogue. And Bato is my favorite character across anything Ghost in the Shell. I think that he is um done the most consistently well, and most times he's voiced by Akio Otsuka, who's my second favorite Japanese voice actor. I just love his work. And I just love the energy that he brings to the character in every single iteration of Bato that he plays. Um I love Bacho's sort of just like vibe. I think that he's just like the sort of cool, muscly character, and I really like, especially in the original movie, his relationship with Motoko because it's sort of this unique partnership that, like, I think the sequel does an interesting comparison by pairing Bato with Togusa because I don't think it's like they dislike each other necessarily, but they don't have nearly as good chemistry as Motoko and Bato do. And throughout the entire part of the sequel, you can clearly tell that Bato is sort of struggling with a heavy sense of grief and loss, and his ultimate acceptance of what happened to the Major is kind of like the whole point of the sequel. And I think that it was done really well. And actually, this is a solid exploration of a character that I think warrants a sequel to be necessary. So in that sense, I think that this movie does quite a bit good. If honestly, like it isn't really that much of a negative for me, but just the fact that the movie is really weird. Um, and the plot is a bit hard to follow at certain points, which is why I compared it to Paprika because I think that's a pretty good movie where I also kind of had the same issues with my watching experience. Um, but this is a solid movie that I think is a deserving sequel and is definitely worth watching because of the ways that it very creatively expands on the original movie. Okay, now switching timelines now. Um, Now we get speaking of expanding the world and story. Here we get to with season two specifically is my favorite bit of Ghost in the Shell content of standalone combo. The second gig, that's my favorite bit of standalone combo. That's my favorite bit of Ghost in the Shell content is standalone complex second gig. Um, and this show, in my opinion, is the perfect shining example of how to make a spin-off. Because this show, it does so much right. It nails the original vibe like so well. Not as good as the original movie, just because I truly think it is such an achievement what the original movie was able to do in its runtime that wasn't even 100 minutes. Um and um this show it nails the vibe. It expands upon every character in new and interesting ways, but also ways that feel like they could have happened in the same timeline as like a sequel potentially to the original movie or something. Like that could have taken place in the same timeline and still made sense, and yet it's still new and fresh stuff. It expands the world in really cool ways by having extremely interesting plots and antagonists. Um, and number four, because it came out like a decade after the original movie, it already has way better animation, and all of the action scenes in this show are just consistently extremely badass, and I love it. Um, Now, to get into the nitty-gritty, I want to start by sort of discussing my thoughts on all of the major characters. Specifically like the members of Squad of Public Security Section 9. So I've already talked about Motoko a fair bit, because she's very important. She's the main character of the original movie. But her in this show is different in a nice way. She has a lot more independence, I feel like, and yet there is still enough sort of like lacking there to where that part of her character that was really good in the original movie is still present in a sense, and it's like just enough to still be a satisfying character aspect to me. Also, Motoko is just a total boss, and and she's able to do way more stuff in standalone complex that just makes her seem like a total badass, and I love it. Um 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 so Bato is, like I said, kind of the most consistent character across the whole thing. He still has a great relationship with Motoko here. Um, and in fact, his like sort of relationship with the Tachikomas is very cute. I'll talk about them in a little bit. Um, but I the I like how Bato in Standalone Complex tends to make sort of he tends to have a more of a like familial aspect to him, I guess. And when I say that, I mean like he has more emotion to him in general. Like um he tends to care a bit more about other people, specifically the other members of Section 9, and he sort of feels a very wholesome, like father-like relationship to the Tachikomas. Um, the Tachikomas, the Tachikomas are these adorable, like, robot things, in which there's like a big group of them, which they're used for like, military assistance, like Section 9 members go out and do an operation, they send a few Tachikomas to help with something, or they're like doing research or something like that. They're like robots that have their own personalities that help out Section 9. Um, and I think that this was a very, very nice addition because it often um added a lot of uh brevity and sort of a lightness to a lot of episodes um because they're just pretty funny and I never really found the Tachikomas to be annoying in a sense, which I truly think is quite an achievement. Um, Instead they were just like fun little guys who you could who just added a nice bright spot in the midst of a lot of heavy topics in between the individual episodes. Um and I really liked especially their conversations where they would debate deep philosophical ideas, and this never felt like a waste of time either because it was that break in brevity, but also it often gave the audience a lot of necessary information about the particular case or mystery of a certain episode because them doing that is normally the way that they would figure out a particular mystery. So, in that sense, like everything kind of serves a purpose, which I really like. And then there's Togusa, who plays a big role in the sequel, but I didn't really talk about him much. But that's because he by far gets the most amount of character in Standalone Complex, where he's a very down to earth, honest family man. And he is the only member of Public Security Section 9 that is fully human without any cyborg parts. And I think that this is is very important for his character. And even though he's not very prominent in the original movie, I think that they kept this core concept and and expanded on it really really well because they show a lot of his family and um a lot of the cases, it feels like Togusa, even more than all the other characters, seems to form a personal attachment to, but in particular, the main plot of season one. Um, and I really like what they did with him. Now I know that Ishikawa is a character in the original movie. I don't remember if like Saito, Paz, and Dorma are also in the original movie, but um, I like these four characters. Like Motoko, Bato, and Togusa are sort of like the main three, I would say, of the core squad members. Um, the rest of them don't. They definitely get their fair amount of screen time, but they don't have as much character depth, which I think is honestly a fine decision, considering like if they were in the original movie, which I can't quite remember if all of them were or not, they I don't think got much screen time. And um, Saito is cool. He's like the cool kind of sniper type. Ishikawa is like the guy that does a lot of data searching. And then Kaz and Borma are sort of like they're more armed people, but they do have their own personalities that's kind of hard to describe exactly. It's not like they're just kind of throwaway extra characters. They definitely do have their own defined personalities. It's just a little bit harder to define than some of the other characters. I really like all of the characters, and um the last character that I want to mention before talking about the other stuff in Standalone Complex is Aramaki, because Aramaki is very important as the chief character, and in Standalone Complex, I think that there is a lot of amazing expansion on his values and what he thinks is important and sort of how he views the world, because even in the original movie there is this sort of mysterious sense to how much he actually knows and like what are his experiences with the world. And I think that Standalone Complex does such a good job of expanding on his character in this way because of how it sort of sheds light on some of those experiences and perspectives that he has, but still leaves a little bit of room of mystery there to where it doesn't feel necessary to see literally every single life detail from him. Um Now, regarding the antagonists for both seasons, this is where I think that this show truly shines, because in the villains is the main way that this show really does the best expansion of the world of Ghost in the Shell, because in season one, via the Laughing Man, due to the fact that he is a very skilled and famous hacker who is able to hack the cyber brains of people, it gives a fantastic insight into the um uh okay, sorry for the pause. I had to get my water. Um, me, like, through The Laughing Man, I feel like it is able to be explored in a fantastic way, the sort of, I guess, lives of the individual people. Because there's so many instances where he will like cyber hack a particular person, and there's like an excellent juxtaposition, I feel, of being shown like a random person's cyber brain being hacked versus the normal life that they live in this very fucked up dystopian world that is Ghost in the Shell. Um, and I just think that he's a really interesting and villain too. Not as good as the one in Second Gig, in my opinion. I think his name is Goda. Let me look it up real quick. Kazundo, yeah, I was right. It's Goda. Kazundo Goda. Um, he is um such a fantastic villain because if the Laughing Man allowed the world to expand and explore the lives of everyday people, then Goda and his maniacal scheming um allowed for the world to expand and explore the nature of how politics and war and just kind of like the sort of higher field stuff that ordinary people in the world of Ghost in the Shell wouldn't worry about. And the juxtaposition between the two seasons is fascinating, and it's so interesting all the stuff that is revealed through this exploration. Um, and speaking of expanding the world, that is exactly what this show does, literally by its episodic structure. So this show um has a has the episode structure of Cowboy Bebop, where certain episodes are directly plot related, and then other ones are complete episodic side stories, which still tie into the larger timeline of the world around it. It's not like Mushishi, where it's completely episodic. It's like side stories that are began and concluded within the episode, which I cannot tell you what an achievement in pacing that is, because it makes each episode like its own watch in a way, even the ones that are focused on the main plot, because they're so different from the side story episodes. And the side story episodes in particular, they kind of cover a mix of like the whole politics versus normal people thing, but they explore so many different unique aspects of societal problems and questions in the world of Ghost in the Shell that just makes it such a lively and interesting sci-fi world. Um, and in this way, again, going back to the vibe thing, it further just nails the vibe by understanding and expanding upon what the world actually is and why it is so captivating. Um, so that is oh well, okay. Before we move on from standalone complex, I have to talk about. I did not write it down in my sort of list of talking points, but I have to talk about um in addition to the two seasons of Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. I really should have mentioned this near the beginning of the video, but oh well, too late now. In my opinion, another thing that is required viewing because it is so good is the special. It's really a movie, but it is a movie, but it's classified as a special. I'm going to call it a movie, which is the last standalone complex thing for a while. Um and it is a movie which is like a sort of, in my opinion, cap on everything on in the standalone complex timeline, and in my opinion, it should have stopped there. But unfortunately, there was more. We'll get to that in a little bit. But this movie, it's called Solid State Society. I don't remember how long it is. I think it's under 2 hours, but it's such a good movie. It does so many interesting things. It blitz the major away. In fact, she's gone for most of the movie, which makes for a super interesting, different dynamic. And it's such a great way to tell how time has passed because Togusa is now the head of Section 9. Bato is still in it, but he's kind of off doing his own thing. And in a way, this movie actually, now that I'm really thinking about it, it achieves a lot of the same effects that made the sequel a quite enjoyable watch. That made Innocence a enjoyable watch to the original movie, because this makes changes, but also keeps a lot of the good core elements there that made Standalone Complex such a fucking good show. And um and so when you combine all these things along with the fact that the villain, who I don't remember the name of or many details about him, I just remember that he had a really fucking interesting motivation and he was developed really well and sort of perfectly tied in everything with the entire concepts of standalone complex as a go and just perfectly capped off everything in the show with this movie. So in my opinion, this movie after the 2 seasons is absolutely required viewing because it is so good and it's such a perfect tap on everything with Standalone Complex as a series. Unfortunately, for beyond this point is where I become significantly less positive because everything from here regarding Ghost in the Shell just kind of goes downhill. Um so the next thing that was released, like Solid State Society was released in 2006, and almost a decade later, they came out with Ghost in the Shell Arise, which was a very strange reboot that was, in my opinion, a um there's going to be a consistent theme with the rest of these projects and how I compare them to Standalone Complex because this um Arise had the biggest issue of just not being a a interesting story that felt like it was a necessary addition to the world. Because in my opinion, Arise is a pretty pointless prequel series, which is sort of about how, like, it tries, it's not in the same timeline, but it, like, is trying to, it establishes, like, how Motoko became the Major and became associated with Section 9 and how the squad formed and this like prequel series as a concept was just completely unnecessary to me because I don't think that this kind of thing was needed at all, especially because like even though it's implied that the other characters are a part of Section 9, that's not really the point in the original movie is like, yes, I think that most of them are shown. I remember at least Ishikawa, Togusa, Bato, and Motoko, of course. I don't remember the others. Um, but like even if they were in the movie, they didn't really play that big of a role. And also like giving Motoko a big fancy backstory with all this stuff about like her body and like finding her origin and like this crazy hacker who's like acting as her body double. It's just and when I'm talking about this, I'm also including Ghost in the Shell, the new movie, because yeah, because it's technically like all the same storyline. Um, I just I found this sequel to be wholly unnecessary, and in terms of like the Motoko part, I don't think that that's something they did well. Like it's just a weird addiction to me, and regarding like the actual squad getting together, that could have been an interesting concept, but it just feels like all of the members are sort of found out of nowhere for the sake of plot convenience. It's kind of like the creators of Arise had the idea that like, oh, we're going to part of this prequel story is going to be how the squad comes together. Except that was the entire idea. There was no other thought really given to how how they would actually join the squad. Like it feels like basically all of them are just found um extremely conveniently for the sake of just doing it and moving along, which completely discredits the original idea in the first place. It feels like all of the characters don't really have a reason to join beyond like being asked by Motoko, and despite having some initial resistance to the idea, then they just seem to immediately agree to it. Um, so I don't particularly like that. Also the character designs are hella weird, especially Motoko. Definitely like the worst example by far. She just looked like weirdly young, and I don't really know why she has such blue hair. It looks kind of ugly, and it's not really what her original color is. Um, like, her hair being more purple and standalone complex, I was fine with because that's very clearly a spin-off. Versus this is seeming like something that really wants to like fit in line with the plot of the original movie, and it just does not work very well at that. And also like they switched out a lot of the voice actors. Like this is the only thing that I watched in Ghost in the Shell where Akio Otsuka did not voice Bato. And like it wasn't bad voice acting, but it was just strange and it made it weird. And speaking of weird, definitely the most baffling thing about this, and I don't think I would have had this problem if I had watched the movies for this, because basically the way that Arise works, which I already think is a weird structure to begin with, but there's like four movies which are the plot of Arise, then there's the new movie. Um, and they condensed it into a 10 episode TV series called Alternative Architecture, which is basically like a more summed up version of the movies. And I decided to watch that thinking it would be the more, I guess, streamlined experience. So Note from my experience, I did not watch the Arise movies. I only watched the alternative architecture um series as my way of consuming this part of the Ghost in the Shell content. And this just it's so stupid. So, and granted, I would not have ever found this out if it wasn't for a Mal review. Because I was looking through to see them for this series because I was kind of curious. And man, hmm, thank you to whatever Mal review I read that made this information clear to me because um I would not have figured out ever before this. So basically, if you watch from episode one, nothing will make any sense. Instead, what you have to do is watch episodes 3 through 8, and then 1 and 2, and then 9 and 10. Why is it like this? I have no fucking idea. It makes no sense, and it completely gets rid of the whole fucking point of having like condensing 4 movies into a TV series because together, like why? I don't understand. It's like easily the most baffling thing about Rise as a series, which is just already did a lot of baffling things, and it's not very good. Um, Definitely the low for me in terms of Ghost in the Shell content. Arise was just not very good. It's a pointless idea that is just incredibly poorly thought out and even more poorly executed. And then, after that, as I said, we were unfortunately not done with the standalone complex storyline after Solid State Society was such a good conclusion to the story because unfortunately SAC 2045 exists. Now, I will be straight up honest, this show is not nearly as bad or has as many baffling decisions as Arise does, but at the same time, it's aggressively mid, and it just doesn't have the good aspects that made Standalone Complex as an original series such a good spin-off. And this is for two main reasons. The first of which, it just does not have an interesting story at all. Like the concept of post-humans is incredibly lazy and boring. And two, and this, in my opinion, is the biggest sin that this show commits is that it just doesn't understand how to use the world well because not only does this not take place in Japan for much of season one, but like even when it does, the locations aren't very clear. Whereas the original series is, and the original movie, that's very clearly a big part of the setting and the vibe of it. And when the first part of um the first season, like um the first half of it is taking place in some place in America, it's just like it's not it doesn't understand the vibe of Ghost in the Shell because it is just not like connecting the vibe. Like it not taking place in Japan just completely ruined the whole vibe of it. Um and the unique energy that the world building works so hard to create. Now, that being said, the biggest positive by far that I can give SAC 2045, and honestly, the main reason that I'm convinced um that I end up watching it till halfway through the second season before I end up dropping because I got so bored, is the fact that uh this SAC 2045 has like probably the most consistently impressive 3D animation I've seen in an anime because they went full 3D on this. And while that might seem like it is a bad thing, it's actually like by far the most consistently good thing about this show as a whole because all the backgrounds are beautifully detailed in every environment. Um I have some qualms with the character designs, like Kogusa and Forma are a little bit worse, but for the most part they look decent. Um and all the action scenes look great. To the point where it was at least keeping my attention a little bit. However, the post-human storyline just being so incredibly boring just lost me completely. Um, to the point where I dropped it halfway through the second season. Um, and yeah, I just if Arise was bad, then just SAC 2045 throughout the entirety of its run is just aggressively mid, and it doesn't do anything extremely egregious, but it also does not really do anything, period. So yeah. It's just very very mid. Um, yeah, that is the entirety of Ghost in the Shell as a franchise reviewed by me. Um, in spite of the issues that I had with the later things from Ghost in the Shell, overall, I had an absolute blast doing this personal watching project of mine, binging through everything because I feel like I have gained such an appreciation for such a cool and unique sci-fi IP that feels like it is genuinely so interesting and different from any other anime that I've watched. Um, Now, again, I will restate my recommendation for required viewing of Ghost in the Shell, this being the original 1995 movie, its sequel, Innocence, both seasons of the standalone Complex TV show, and lastly, the movie that comes after the end of the seasons of standalone Complex, Solid State Society. Everything else is not worth watching, in my opinion. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Very long video. So if you watched any part of it, then I'm thankful. Um, but if you happen to be a fan of Ghost in the Shell, then comment below this video and let me know what you think about it. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.